I'm Carole Taylor. On this edition of Journal, Chief Constable Steve Rai. It's almost a year since he was chosen to lead the Vancouver Police Department into the future, the first South Asian chief for the VPD. His story is so interesting. Born in Punjab, India, he came with his family to Canada at age 5. A boy who lived next door to him in Kitsilano was unable to pronounce his name, Satwinder Singh, so he named him Steve. So Steve it is. A new immigrant, his dad found work in maintenance at the Vancouver Police Department, and he loved it, perhaps influencing his son's decision to join the VPD at the age of 23. When the chief talks about his first assignment, walking the streets of East Vancouver 36 years ago, his amazement and enthusiasm boils over. "Remember that?" he says to a Business in Vancouver reporter. "Gun violence every day, open warfare with machine guns out the back windows of cars, shooting each other on Kingsway." Sometimes we think we are the only ones living in dangerous times. Steve Rai has always believed in hard work, education, and learning. While he was carrying out his policing duties on the streets of Vancouver, he was also learning by taking many additional courses, including being the only Canadian police officer accepted for the U.S. International Leadership Development Program in 2006. Well, now Chief Rai can put all that experience to work, starting with his dream of Vancouver having its own police academy. Steve once said that about 40% of his time is spent lobbying, and for sure it has paid off with the province and city officially blessing this new academy. Chief Constable Steve Rai joins us after this message. Chief Constable, are you getting used to the title by now?
A little bit. It's, comes with a lot of responsibility, so I have to keep reminding myself. I represent 2,500 team members, so yeah, I'm getting used to it.
When you were here last time when we talked, you were so keen about the need for Vancouver to get its own training facility.
Yeah.
And now you have it. You've got the blessing of the province and the city.
Mm-hmm.
Why did you think it was so important to have a Vancouver Police Training Academy?
You know, we have looked at this for over a decade, and the police training hasn't evolved with where social issues and our city's unique perspectives need to be instilled in our recruits early on. So we started a pre-academy 4 weeks before they go to the academy. These young 24-year-old officers, 23, 22, they're coming in out of university and they're going to a standardized model of training at the Justice Institute. And then when they graduate, we give them another 3 to 4 weeks. So we were already supplementing almost 8 weeks of training.
So tell me, where in the training did you feel the traditional methods? What were they missing?
They were missing, they became very standardized at the police academy. There was a lot of self-study. There wasn't a lot of pressure put on them for old school. Like, let's face facts. Policing is still a uniformed service. It's paramilitary. There's still a need for hands-on training, real live actors, exposure to reality. And I felt, and our department felt, the Justice Institute had veered away from that because of space, capacity issues there, because of lack of, full-time instructors or resourcing, whatever. But it became more of a post-secondary-ish kind of training versus hardcore emergency services training. So that's an overarching perspective. And I can get into, we're going to use live actors. We're going to use, we've got a very robust range. We're going to, the range time that they will get, because an officer can take license to take someone's life in a microsecond. No officer wants to do that, but you need the training to make sure the decision basis for that is sound in training and decision making. So we've got those kind of facilities. We're moving to technology, virtual reality. We just purchased $2 million worth of virtual reality pods that will train officers in live scenarios in virtual reality, including driver training. So all those core policing skills, our perspective is the amount of time each cadet was getting on that was coming down. It was becoming more academic, more self-study, more self-learning. It's not what we, the feedback we were getting from our recruits was compelled us to keep the fight going, to get our own academy. The city is unique on drug addiction, homelessness, poverty, how we interact with. We have a model in Vancouver, and we want to instill that in our recruits. So it was customization was another angle about argument for us having our own academy. And, I had said to the Premier, we met one-on-one, and I said, the model that we had in the 70s and 80s, 90s, when I went through in 1990, was a standalone police academy at the West Point Grey Campus Justice Institute right by Jericho Beach there, where the Army Reserve base is. And it was a standalone, isolated police emergency training center. If we went back to that model, I think all departments would be happy. But when you embed a police academy in a post-secondary type of model, Justice Institute, where you're training corrections and, social workers and other, it doesn't allow the space, time, capacity to do those intense, specialized skill development.
So I think you're saying that your recruits going through the course didn't feel they were street ready.
Well, I'm trying to balance. We did get it. We worked with the province, but that's what we felt. We think we can deliver a more, and it's not a criticism. That's the model we went to, and it was fine for when we went to it. It had evolved, but now it's evolved back, and we want our recruits to be "quote unquote" street ready.
So, Steve, when you talk to these young people, these new recruits, what's the most common misperception they've got about the police when they come in?
When they come in, I think, the misperception when I joined, I'll just tell you, was, hey, we're going to have car chases and we're going to chase, it's going to be, gun battles and all that. And that was that era. And there was plenty of that. And these new recruits, they're my kids' age, they're early 20s out of school. They're much more, much nicer, and I don't sense that they don't know that it's not cops and robbers still, but there's still a sense of, hey, we're gonna, most of policing is talking, learning, listening, helping, compassion, and I think some of them still feel, there's still an element of rough and tough and tumble, and that's where you need those skills, but they're still coming in with a bit of that, right?
And you said to me at the time you had at least 3 major things you were going to work on: transparency, accountability, and getting police back to police work.
That's right, and that's also part of it. Right now we have about 300 vacancies, 150 soft and 150 hard vacancies. We can't get the proactive policing we want to do, which you're seeing it here the last couple of months, beats on the ground, talking and walking. We brought in a retired program for officers that have been out of policing or in other departments for a few years, and we're bringing them back. So we really need to get back to the basics, which is going into a coffee shop, visiting the store owner, a restaurant, seeing the same people that maybe are on the street, living on the street, having some continuity of interaction and making sure, hey, you're back on the street, Bob. What happened? We can help you. So the quality of life policing. And you can't do that without your vacancies being full. If you don't have the resources, then you're only doing responsive policing. You're only doing reactive policing. So really want to get back to those basics. And the academy will help that, because we can surge up, we can surge down, we can put through more classes, we can do it quicker. And, just speaking of back to basics, the downtown east side is a back to basics neighborhood. We've tried every, we, meaning our society, have tried everything. There's lots of supports there. There's some would say an industry of supports. But back to basics also means us being present there. So Barrage, you saw when we did Barrage, we spent $5 million. Officers were there running targeted projects. They were more visible because we had the funds to deliver people on the ground. We can't spend $5 million every 3 quarters. This academy, District 5, will create a permanent presence there to do back to basics kind of policing, where there'll be presence physically, there'll be presence, with officers walking and talking and getting to know, citizens down there. So we're all well on our way to that.
I thought the location choice was just brilliant because, as you say, a lot of preventative is just being present.
Yeah.
And I interviewed the CEO of London Drugs when they made the hard decision to leave, and they had to do it because of so much retail crime and the atmosphere there. And I was thinking, what a big hole that is in the middle of the downtown East Side. And then you come in with the idea, well, you want presence? We're going to have all of our recruits coming in there every day and learning that this is part of Vancouver.
That's right. London, that's a big space for a retailer. London Drugs is an iconic brand in the Lower Mainland in Western Canada. They, like some other businesses, had a tough go there. They had a tough go with retail crime, socioeconomic status. I don't know if people can afford certain things in certain stores. All sorts of issues there. We've had other restaurants. There's that corridor between Gastown and Chinatown. I think it's the Carole corridor. Restaurants are suffering.
May we come back to this? So I'm going to take a quick break and then we'll continue our discussion. Chief Steve Rai is with us again, and you were in the middle of talking about that area around Hastings and what's going on there. And I just think it's great that the Academy is going to be right in the middle of things.
The Academy, but also the district, and I've said it, the cheapest form of policing and the most effective hasn't changed since Peel's principles, 1800s, presence, being visible. That's why you still see in Europe, especially the UK, bobbies on every corner. And some places, some cities in the States have, jumping on that as well. New York did it in the 80s, when Giuliani came, he put 4 cops on each street corner, right, where high crime. It's the easiest, simplest way to get safety, balance, settling a neighborhood down. And the debate you see playing out in the public, that I don't hear that from ground level. Ground level, including the people that need help, are thankful we're there because they're not getting preyed on by the low-level criminal elements, that are the last end of a chain of criminality. They're the ones pumping drugs in the alleys. They're the ones putting young girls to work, doing, being exploited for sexual purposes. They're the ones that are stealing and shoplifting. They're part of the cycle of misery down there. So by us being their presence in the cheapest format, which is a win for the city, a win for the neighborhood, a win for the police, it's a win-win, and it's the cheapest, easiest form to do that. And so the people that are complaining, I don't know, what are they worried about? Are they worried about, hey, we may settle things down, it'll be too successful? Chinatown wants us there, Gastown wants us there, the Carole corridor, those restaurants, when the cruise ships, it's going to be the largest cruise ship season in a long time, and people want to walk, get off the ship, go look at the steam clock, walk down Carole Street, go to a restaurant, go to Chinatown, back to the cruise ship. You don't want them running a gauntlet of, people shooting drugs in the alleys and people running around, chasing each other with knives. So it's good for everybody. And it is cost effective. It helps the retailer out. That space was going to be boarded up. Nestor's Market's there. That could have gone next. And it's not good for having the city with, a Detroit look, what they went through and they're still going through, So it's a win-win-win. It was a no-brainer, and I'm happy we could get it done.
So did you think you'd have to be this much of a politician to get the job done?
Well, I'll tell you, you should be a police chief after you've done all the police work, because half my job is political, and you better be experienced on knowing and confident, knowing you have some principles and you're going to die by those principles. So if you're looking to be a yes person as chief, and it goes for any city in the world, don't bother, because you won't make anybody happy.
So how about internally? Because I've worked in a bureaucracy, being in politics, but I'm sure everyone had their rigid systems and things. Right. And you talked to me about you want to be an agent of change and get in there. How's that going?
It's going very well. So internally, technology, we've just invested a tremendous amount of resources, people, money, skills from outside, and we are going to technologically go from a certain level to, and this is not me saying it, this is third parties based on what we're doing, probably one of the best in North America technology-wise. So I mentioned virtual reality training, supplementing, drones, how officers go to a call and it's body-worn, but having that body-worn video transcribed into a narrative that they sign off on to go to court, the amount of time that will change or save. The ability for technology for officers to look at video, have AI look at the video, and you say, I'm looking for somebody wearing purple shoes in a crowd, and the AI will do that in minutes versus hours of looking at video. On and on it goes. How we edit reports, collect data. So we're going through an entire 12-month process of creating technological capacity at each level for each unit that will, by the end of this year after FIFA, we will be one of the best in North America. So a lot of departments are using pieces of the technology. We've invested in all of it. So we were able to do some savings in other areas in order to invest. Our officers were the first ones in North America. Our officers now, every officer that you see in a white shirt that are in management and senior management are now out of an association, and we've decertified them into contract. And contracts create a lot of ability for the chief to do succession planning, do engagement performance management. And so that's a bit of I've taken I've always, and I've said this even before I was chief, the public sector needs to learn from private business. And so in policing, it's no different. So I've taken some principles of accountability, engagement, performance, and tried to embed them in our leadership.
Getting resistance?
Because the way we did it and the timing was right, it took us about 10 months here to do it. There was resistance and, fear. So when you're in the public sector, what's the one thing the public offers? Security. And so that was the biggest obstacle is, hey, listen, I've been on contract half my career in various positions. It's fine. You can make as many mistakes as you want, but I need engagement, leadership, effort, and I need that urgency that you get in the private sector when you're running a company. So we've done that. We've done technology. We've District 5, the police academy, retired officer program that we've just worked out with the union, because that's a big deal for unions to have officers come in outside of, we were able to get the best collective agreement in Canada for our front line. And, on and on it goes. So we've done a lot here in about 10, 11 months.
Probably not fast enough, but...
Yeah. So I get criticized. Why are you going so fast? Well, these are things that I believed in before, and we've realigned our entire leadership team. We've realigned mid-level management, setting the department up in the city for future, really strengthening their skills, so they're ready to take on leadership positions at a higher level when people like me are all retired. So I've always worked at a urgent level. It's probably my ethnic, parents, first immigrant, kind of background that, has instilled in me to work fast and hard.
I was very happy to see you speaking out on Bill C-22.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe you could say why you spoke out, because I haven't seen the police very often taking a position on legislation.
Yeah, we haven't been able to keep. So first of all, I want to thank the federal minister. If you've ever met him, he's actually a very genuine, authentic person. And he had, I think, some hiccups there when he started. I think they went at him pretty hard on the gun buyback. And but he's made quite a positive impression, I think. He's on his authenticity to want to help law enforcement these last few months. And he's traveled across the country. He did the announcement back east, and then he did secondary announcements in BC here.
We should explain, this is the bill that kind of privacy versus policing, they bump into each other. Yeah,
so this is part of our, Canada is a nice country. We're so nice that we're now under threat. And we're under threat in the other Five Eyes countries, Australia, New Zealand, the US, the UK, and I'm missing one in there. But, they have, and India's in there as well, Western democracies, they have robust rules where privacy is balanced with keeping society safe. And we haven't been able to keep up with these extortions are coming from Malaysia, they're being run from other parts of the world, sexual exploitation.
Sadly, I'm going to have to interrupt you there and say, will you please come back and continue this conversation?
Sure.
But I thought it was good that you spoke up on behalf of police and understanding the needs for privacy.
Yeah, it's important to balance our society. We got to stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Back in a sec. In an interview with Darpan, the Canadian South Asian magazine based in Vancouver, Chief Constable Steve Rai has said his story is not just about law enforcement. It's about honoring where you come from while committing to where you are. He encourages his own children to live lives of purpose. Let me know your thoughts on YouTube. Till next time, I'm Carole Taylor.